It's monikers. You often hear it called, a meat grinder. But a funnel is when, a new campaign is starting, and each player brings 3 or 4 randomly generated 0-level characters to the table. There's no backstory apart from their occupation. There's no equipment apart from, like the gravedigger might have a shovel. And then everyone kind of, they come with their trade goods. So a gravedigger might have some, a pound of grave soil, whereas the farmer brings his goat.
There are just some games that breed a rabid following, and Dungeon Crawl Classics is one of them. I sit down with 4 of the gentlemen that are behind the game. We talk about what Mr. Goodman was thinking as he pieced together the game at its origins. We talk about some of the signature aspects of the game, like the dice and the funnel. And we dig into each of their processes as they contribute to the game and to the supplements. At the time of the release, they are currently having DCC 100 up on Kickstarter. I've backed it, and you can check it out by scrolling down and clicking the link. I want to give a quick shout out to some of our newest patrons: Sam Ius, Peter Thomas, Joe KL, William Payne, Jacob, Isaac Turton, Aid S, and Eli Greason. Because of you and the other 100-plus patrons, I'm able to put out content on a weekly basis. All right, sit back, relax, and enjoy my time with the crazy guys from Goodman Games.
Do you love to unplug and play games around the table? Greetings, friends and floorheads, to Tabletop Talk from Third Floor Wars. If you love tabletop gaming, you are in the right place. Listen as Craig delivers in-depth discussions and interviews with game designers, creators, insiders, and experts. Learn from the people making and playing the role-playing, miniature, and board games you love.
Howdy friends, Craig here. Today we discuss the RPG Dungeon Crawl Classics, and we have a full house packed with guests from the Goodman Games team. Let's start off with Michael Curtis. He's the Director of Product Development for Dungeon Crawl Classics. He's been with the company for 15 years and created the Dungeon Alphabet, the Chained Coffin, Frozen in Time, and was the lead designer of the DCC Lankmer setting. Michael, welcome to the third floor.
Thank you very much for having me on, Craig.
So the first off, we're going to get into a whole bunch of stuff, but already you can see part of the reason, audience, why I was dying to talk to these guys. And this Dungeon Crawl Classics got on my radar is just the names of all of the supplements are just fantastic as you go through it. So even if you have no idea what we're about to talk about, just the titles alone hook your interest. But before we get into talking about DCC, Michael, I want to ask you your origin story. So there was a day, it wasn't yesterday, that you knew nothing about tabletop role-playing. And then suddenly it was put in front of you. You were first exposed to it. Can we go back there?
So it would have been between Christmas and New Year's in 1980. It was a rainy day. I was visiting relatives in upstate New York, and my cousin Matt, who was maybe 2-3 years older than me, so I would have been about maybe 8 or 9 around this time, he said, "You want to play a game?" And I said, "Sure." And he got out the Holmes box version, and he handed me an entire party of adventurers. So I didn't have my first character wasn't a thief. My first character was an entire party. And we went to a dungeon, and I killed some giant ants, and I found like 16 copper pieces. And I said, "All right, yay, I go back to town." And because I thought we were supposed to go in and kill the monster and get the treasure. And I had killed the monster, and I had gotten a whopping 16 copper pieces, which when you're 9 is, I don't know how much that is or anything. So then my cousin told me, "No, but wait, there's more treasure." So we played the afternoon, me playing an entire party of adventurers, and then it was over. I came back home, and I said to my mom, "You have to buy me this Dungeons and Dragons game." And that's how it went. From there on, a series of questionable life choices have just led me to where I am today. That's basically where it goes.
So I'd be interested, Michael. Obviously, hooked you young, right? And that origin story is a relatively common one. It's really interesting as I talk to more and more people how often it is around that age. It's usually an older relative or neighborhood kid, and it kind of introduces. What is interesting to me is what stuck, right? So you've played a lot of games when you're 8 or 9 years old, but for some reason, when you played this one, it's now leading to you being on my stupid podcast. So I'd be curious, looking back as adult Michael, what do you think it was that made such an impact?
I just think it was simply because it was not like nothing I had ever seen before. I mean, it was. I mean, it was very similar to playing guns or whatever you played with your friends when you were a kid. It was unstructured play, but there was enough structure in here that it kind of eliminated the "bang, you're dead, no, I'm not" factor. Which I don't think even if you can formulate that and express that at that age, you're still aware of it. Yeah. And I don't think when I played D&D said, oh, this eliminates that factor, but I was like, this seems fairer for some reason. I mean, even after the third time, I fell down into an increasingly deeper and deeper pit until I said, it's okay until we run to a 60-foot pit because I only have 50 feet of rope. So, So.
Where's my 10-foot pole? So I'd be curious, Michael, when was the first time you went outside of Dungeons and Dragons? So what was the first time that you looked at something that was outside of that ecosystem?
I mean, it wasn't too long after that because the second role-playing game I ever owned was Gamma World. So I mean, if we're talking like outside of, depends on how far we're talking about outside. We're talking outside like the
That's
TSR
outside.
wheelhouse.
No.
Okay, all right. Because back in the day, back in the early to mid 80s, TSR was pretty much like the only thing out there. I mean, that was like because somebody may sell you could get the D&D box set in like the strangest of places. I mean, not just not just the hobby store.
Yeah.
So it was all the TSR titles were like so I was all Gamma World, Top Secret, Marvel Superheroes, all at that point. And it wasn't really until I started playing other titles until I think I was introduced to like Palladium, like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and then White Wolf and all the stuff later on and stuff. So yeah. But Gamma World was RPG number 2 for me.
That's cool. So my second guess is Brendan LaSalle. He's a staff writer with Goodman Games and most recently released the Mutant High School zine. He created X-Crawl and is part of the coming X-Crawl Classic Edition. Welcome to the third floor, Brendan.
Thank you very much for having me. Great to meet you.
So, Brendan, you get a special thank you because you're the one that helped me corral this crew together. So a big thank you for that. It was a huge favor to me, but we got to do the same thing, my friend. So let's hear your origin story.
Sure. So I started in '77. I was a really little kid, and we went to California to visit my parents' friends who were there for a year on sabbatical, and their son was a little older than me, and he had the Blue Holmes edition of Dungeons and Dragons. So he sat down and we played the most insane, convoluted, like off the books version of the game that you can possibly imagine. We used action figures as our pieces, and there were dice, but we sort of did whatever we wanted to with them. And it was ridiculous and hilarious fun. And I too went home and said, "You now must buy me this game." But I had it, but I didn't play for like a few years after that until I started Boy Scouts, and then my Boy Scout troop turns out all played, and I sort of got back into the hobby. So I had like one big burst with it, and then nothing for a few years.
Yeah, and it's interesting too how that tends to play together, and all the young kids listening just don't realize what it was like, because I'm around the same years as you and Michael when I started finding this stuff too, and there was no internet, there was no bulletin boards, we just kind of figured it out, right? And what you played is whoever showed you what they played, which may have nothing to do with the rule book at all. But somehow, we kind of sort through it and figure it out. And then how about for you, Brendan? When did you find yourself kind of expanding out just outside of that first game that you played, when you started discovering there's other games?
Well, new games were thrust upon my gaming group because my buddy's mom decided that what we were doing was satanic.
Oh.
And they were phone calls to parents, and we didn't want to exclude Johnny because he was hilarious. And the compromise was he introduced us all to Traveler,
Nice.
His dad went out and picked up like the entire stack of little traveler books. And we spent a jolly afternoon creating NPCs, many of whom died during creation, in order to play. And then we did that. Turns out Johnny, since it was his game, and I love the guy, still miss him, terrible GM. So we didn't play it for very long. We just decided we got into other things, and we didn't do that. I didn't. That was my first one, was Traveler. So
that's a good jump, though. Traveler was serious business, especially for back then. Still kind of serious business today. And
original hard SF game, I think.
Oh, no question. No question. And how about for you, again, when adult Brendan looks back and thinks about, how this hooked you and led to, a career and where you are now, what was it that did it? Why did this stick with you and stay with you?
I was transported. I was absolutely transported. For however goofy our rules and how convoluted the version of the game that my friend and I played, his setup for it, where I was like this homeless kid wandering around the city that found a magic porthole that I walked through and, discover this fantasy world where I was a ranger, or whatever. You know what I mean? It was just mind blowing to me, and it, the spell of that game was with me. It still is, and I'm a life rock. Once I got back into it, I didn't really, I wouldn't say I always was going to do it as a career, but it's been my main, it was my main hobby.
Yeah.
I never really strayed far from it. It just that first game absolutely changed my life.
It's incredible to me how often when I talk about these origin stories and people, go back to when they were 9 years old, for crying out loud, but the story is vivid, right? And I see it in the faces when people are telling the story, they're going back there. And it's something that's unique about this hobby, that it just kind of burns these memories and images and feelings into you. And it that didn't happen when you played Stratego. Right. It's something very, very unique. It's cool. All right. My third guest, go ahead, Brandon. I'm sorry.
Power narrative, I think. We're conditioned to think in stories, and all of a sudden we're all creating a story together. It just sucks you in.
Yeah, it's transforming. There's absolutely no question about it. So I'm not done yet. I still have two more guests. So my next guest is Harley Stroh. He's a writer going all the way back to DCC 17, Tomb of the Savage Kings, which I was one of the first ones that I bought as soon as I got the big book. The next release we're looking for, now listen to this. The first one I just talked about, DCC 17. The next release he's coming out for him is DCC 100. So this is starting to give you an idea of what the hell's going on here. Music of the Sphere. So Harley, welcome to the third floor.
Hey, Craig. Thank you for having us all on. I appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. So Brendan stole Michael's story. Do you have a somewhat original origin story, or are we going to...
There's a company story that Joseph hands out when you join on. For me, it was I had a babysitter. It was second grade. My babysitter brought this crazy game with weird dice that I had no clue, and he played us through the first few rooms of not Keep on the Borderlands, but Caves of Chaos.
Oh yeah.
I died in that pit. As you go towards the kobolds, you hang a right. And there's the rats at the bottom of the pit, and it's 15 minutes in. But then, like the next week, I was like, dude, when are you coming back? When are you going to babysit us again? And his family decided it was satanic.
No kidding.
So we had a illicit exchange in an abandoned lot where he gave me the box set and all the books, and I received them from him, knowing that they were evil, that I had to hide them from my family, that this thing that had given me so much joy had to be hidden and tucked away.
Isn't that funny?
I'd been given the Necronomicon in like an empty lot behind his house, and it was mine to carry forward now. So, and then I've been gaming ever since.
That's cool. That's very, very cool. And how did it? What do you think put the hooks in it as a kid, Harley? That kept you going for so long.
So I run at least when we're out of the pandemic, I run games for Kids of the Library.
Oh, that's
and
so cool.
The same thing that's true for them is true for me. Is like with a good judge, with a good GM, you're presented with this world where the parents aren't going to tell me what to do. They're not going to tell you what to do. Little fourth grader, I'm not going to tell you what to. You can act out in this world, however, you're in charge, and,
Yeah.
and I think that really struck me as a child, that I was finally making my own decisions, receiving my own repercussions, and I see it with the kids that we run today. It's the exact same thing, like this freedom that role playing games bestows upon children just like blows their minds wide open.
So I'd be curious, Harley, age group. So what is the age range on these kids that you're playing with?
Yeah, our youngest, the youngest we've run with is in fourth grade, and then it goes all the way up, probably freshman, sophomore in high school.
And do you notice anything different about the kids as they're gronking it at different levels, right? At different ages? Are you seeing it or seeing them change over time as they age? Because there's big jumps that happen in that age range that you just talked about. And I'd be really curious to know if you see the game being grasped any differently.
That's a fascinating question. It feels like the older kids are able to live into the imagination more strongly. Well, it's I'll have my younger players, and they're like, well, I grab my grenade and throw it, because they're still coming out of like Cops and Robbers, essentially. Like, we're in that timeline, right? And I'm like, well, you don't have a grenade. I don't see it on your character sheet. We didn't discover a grenade in the last adventure, and so there's. And maybe it's not so much the age of the player, but their experience of playing, and they sort of learn those unspoken rules of, yes, this is make believe, and yes, you can do whatever you want, but there's a threshold of reality that kind of binds it all together.
Very cool, very cool. All right, last but not least, Dieter Zimmerman. He loves beer and cats and has been with Goodman Games for about 15 years now. Dieter, welcome to the third floor.
Thanks. I'm happy to be here.
All right, my friend. Was it a babysitter? Was it a friend? What was it?
It was a very similar story to everyone else's. It was one of my friend's older brothers. But the difference with my story is we didn't have a rule book the first time I played. We just had one D20. He was making it all up as he went along. We'd roll the D20. He'd be like, 15. Okay, I guess you killed the monster. Sure. So yeah, I don't remember much about that first adventure really, except I remember firing crossbows at specters.
Nice. So what was your first encounter with like any type of structure? When's the first time you got a rule book in front of you?
Well, then, when for my 9th birthday, then I got the red box basic set. So.
And were you a player? Were you GM? Did you do both?
I did both. Me and a couple of the other neighborhood kids would trade off. So.
Very, very cool. Now, as we talk about this, and obviously, again, we're all here right now. But the other thing I think I find interesting, Dieter, is if there's been a break. So a lot of times when I'm talking to people, they grab onto it when they're young and, in middle school, high school. And then at some point there's like a 5-year gap. There's a 10-year gap. Did that happen to you? Or did you play consistently all the way to today?
I played pretty consistent. Actually, if there's a break at all, it's been the last few years. But yeah, I've done some playing online recently and stuff, but no, there has not really been a break for me. Not more than a few months at a time.
So here's the big question for you then. I somehow through a portal grab a recording of you running a game 15 years ago, and you and I sit down and watch it together. What are you going to notice that's changed?
Let's see, 15 years ago. I think what's changed for me as a DM in 15 years is I'm a lot more open to just going on the fly than following the structure of the adventure, I think. If the players come up with a great idea, I will run with it. Yeah.
And what hasn't changed? So what would we see that I would see if I played with you today?
What hasn't changed is I like to do the settings. I like to make up my own settings. I don't like to use prepackaged settings very much. And NPCs, I try to give them all voices and distinguishing characteristics, I guess.
Very, very cool. So guys, the Insider Insight series is my opportunity to sit down with designers, developers, artists, writers, and creators and learn how they approach their work. I try to understand their process, inspiration, and the methods for crafting their creations. We're going to do that with these 4 gentlemen, but first we're going to take a break. When we get back from this break, let's figure out what the hell DCC is. We'll be right back. You like science fiction, right? love playing games, maybe even role-playing games. But what if you can't get your friends together for a game night? If you love games like Mothership or Orbital Blues, check out Dead Belt, a card-based space western solo strategy RPG about skillful and desperate scavengers picking over the remains of junked starships in hopes of a juicy payday. In it, you deal with lurking dangers, push your luck, and walk away with enough cred to keep on flying. Of course, you might get eaten by lurking aliens, or run afoul of rival scavengers, or face the murderous ghosts of long-dead spacers. No one said life in the Dead Belt was going to be easy. For more information on this and all of Sean and Abby Drake's games, swing over to acoupleofdrakes.com. The link's in the show notes. So, as listeners know, I took a long break from role-playing games, and the pandemic brought me back to something that I forgot how much I loved. And guys, for you, it was about a 20-year break. And, you know, a lot happened in role-playing in 20 years. And I spent a lot of time, and it became, you know, one of the subjects of this podcast, kind of figure out what the hell happened over 20 years. And there was certain games that just came up, right? So as I talked to people and I was like, you know, what are you playing? What are you enjoying? Dungeon Crawl Classics. And I'm amazed at the rabid following that this game has. I've never met anybody that likes this game. I've only ever met people who love this game. And before we really talk about it, as far as what it is, I also like to get an understanding of where it came from. So, Harley, I want you kind of, if you, as best as we can, there was a point where Mr. Goodman had no idea that this was going to happen, right? And then the way these things tend to happen is an idea starts churning in the head. We try something out. Do you have a sense, Harley, of when it really started to turn into something that it eventually became today?
So we were at Gen Con, and I don't recall the year, and I apologize, but he came to Joseph came to Chris Doyle and myself, and he asked if we could write a 64-page distillation of the rules at the time. And this must have been like right at the end of 3.5 or right at the start of 4E. And so he came forward and was like, oh wow, you know, like the Moldvay book, or like the Mincer book. Like, we all got really excited about that possibility. But then time passed, and things fell away. And it was right about that same time that Doug Kovacs started harassing Joseph about having never read Fritz Leiber or any of the Appendix N. And so, so 4E, came and went, and all of a sudden Joseph, to speak for him, he found himself, there's this valley of gaming stores are going out of business. Distributors, weren't paying publishers. Yeah. And so he had a lot of time on his hands all of a sudden, because what had been a really successful line of adventures, of third-party adventures, for Wizards of the Coast, we were writing 3.0, 3.5, 4E. All of a sudden that dropped off, and Joseph found himself with a lot of free time. And Doug had suggested that he read all this Appendix N, so his brain was just frothing with all this Appendix N magic. And Joseph took it upon himself to start off a small book of adventure, well, rather a rule book that he could take to his cousins, to his family's getaways in the summer, and run for his own family. And so he took that opportunity and then created the foundation and the structure for what we now know as DCC RPG. And it was, I think he had tried to introduce his family to 4E, and that fell really flat. And then so that inspired him to write something that dads could introduce to their kids, and
interesting.
A harried judge on the weekend could run really easily.
Did he ever explain why he fell flat and why that then led to DCC? I'd be really interested to understand that.
I could dig through my emails, but I'm pretty sure it was just too complicated. And so the while the DCC RPG, you see the book and it's, Mike could tell us, but it's like 360 pages of tome, and it could stop a bullet if somebody shot at you. The core mechanics is, you declare what you're going to do. You're going to roll a d20, and any one interaction is very, very simple and like, in my own case, like a third grader, a fourth grader can understand it and play it. And so it's easy to be passed along that way.
Yeah, and it What I thought was interesting too, as I started going through it, is obviously it brought back memories, right? Because there's a lot of things that are familiar in there, but and I think we tend to forget it, just how bad the rules were written back then. And not a comment. I mean, it was the first time anybody had frickin' done it before, so God bless. But it's really interesting to see how it's been tightened up. Now, Brendan, when did you start being exposed to Dungeon Crawl Classics, or when did it get on your radar?
So I had been talking to Joseph during all of this, and I sort of saw it in like flashes. Like, we had a conversation on the phone one time where he was like, yeah, I'm just really unhappy with 4th edition. I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm thinking about something. And then like a while later, like, yeah, me and Doug and Harley went out. We talked about this. We're going to do our own system. I'm like, oh, great. I'd love to, if I can help at all. And then like he came to Atlanta with a very early version of it. And we actually had 2 play tests that day. One where it was a funnel, and I thought, this is the craziest thing I've ever done. I was having so much fun. Like, I throw another guy at the trap. What happens, And then we did a higher level adventure that afternoon, and I kind of went away going, all right, I get that. That was really something. But honestly, I was still doing X-Crawl at the time, and I was sort of doing my own thing for Joseph, but under another aegis, within his company. So I was sort of on the periphery of it, and it wasn't until like eventually at one time I got the core book and like the first 5 or 6 adventures, I want to say, like all at once, and I went home and just devoured them. And I got completely sucked in, and like the playing it was one thing, and trying it, but actually going through that rule book. First of all, I started hearing Dio in my head, and I'm not even the biggest metal guy, but I was like, oh my God, what's happening? But also I was like the 2 days after I got that, I sent this very long, very polite email to Joseph, like, please, sir, may I please write an adventure for your new game? And he was very cool about it. I was not there for the system heavy lifting at all. I think I'm listed as a playtester in the core book, and that was all of my contribution was, my elf getting killed by the party after I tried to betray them all.
You did your part.
I like to think I added something, but it wasn't until the system was underway pretty well that I jumped in and, it was like, please let me write an adventure for this, because I was so excited about it.
Yeah. Now, Dieter, 15 years is a long time. And of course we do see your name listed under the designer group in the core rule book. Over those 15 years, I'd be curious, what have you seen happen? So what did the game start off as, and what has it become?
Well, it started as a series of modules for D&D 3.0, 3.5, 4th edition, as we said before. But it became its own game. What was it, like 2011, 2012 maybe was when Joseph was working on it and published it. And it's a very different game, I guess, than D&D was at the time. It kind of reinterprets the source material, I guess, and puts it out there differently.
What do you think? What do you think is the best way to explain that? So if I've got a listener right now who, has heard of Dungeon Crawl Classics, has heard this conversation that we've had so far, we really haven't talked about exactly what the game is. So what's a good way to explain it to a new listener? Okay,
well, I'm good at this one because I've worked the booth at a whole bunch of different cons, and I have to tell people this all the time.
Hit play.
So right when Joseph went and read all the Appendix N books and all that, and basically he decided to create a game that reflected those sources better, in his opinion. So it's a lot more Robert E. Howard and Fritz Leiber than it is Tolkien in flavor and feeling. It's a lot more big adventure rather than traveling across the countryside to Mount Doom or whatever.
Yeah, and it definitely evokes that. And I'd be curious for you, Michael, when we talk about Appendix N, we talk about what drove this, a different type of fantasy game, right? Again, back to kind of the source material, as it was commented before. In your mind, how does the game do that, right? So it's not just the DCC, 100s, 58s and stuff like that. What do you think is mechanically causing that to be invoked?
Well, I think mechanically wise, I mean, it's like the 3.5 system stripped down. So it gets rid of a lot of the excessive stuff, like the feats and all the rest of that stuff. And because it gets down to just like the bare bones of a system, it's really easy to graft on other stuff. Like I always said that 3.5 is the Swiss watch, like 3.5, like the as written is like the Swiss watch of gaming, because everything, it works very precise. Everything is, it's all, it's this beautiful machinery, but if you change the slightest thing over here, you might be throwing off something else completely else down the line, and you don't realize it until, 8 levels later or something like that. There's, there used to be the whole thing of like, like this is the broken feet thing. Like if I take, if I'm proficient in like chain whip and then I take this, I'm doing 800 points of damage per round or something. I have broken the system. So since DCC gets rid of all of that and really embraces that randomness, like from get go, like you may not even survive, the character you want to survive may not even survive to become a first level character. So because it's so stripped down, it's this hot rod that you can just add stuff to. And like when we got the Liber license to do Lankmar, everybody was so, like, oh, this is the best system whatsoever, because we literally just tweaked a couple things and we made it seem, exactly like that setting, because it was so accepting because it was so lean. And the other thing is that, not mechanical wise, but there's language choices which you may not be aware of. Like you were saying at the start of the show, how like the titles of the adventures are so evocative and everything.
Yeah.
Joe has always been like, when we title an adventure, think of like those Appendix N stories, like the stuff like the sword and sorcery titles that were written back in the 30s and in the 40s and the 60s and 70s. So there was a while like we couldn't call anything like the blank of the blank, just because that is like the Keep on the Borderlands, or the Sinister Secret of So that's why we have stuff like the Chain Coffin and and the Hole in the Sky and Peril on the Purple Planet. I mean, these really sound like stuff that either Sabbath lyrics or something that you're gonna find in like a Weird Tales.
Yeah.
So I mean, so even there, subconsciously, we're evocating like it's a different mindset than they like whatever not throwing shade on anybody, but they're some of the big names are just like, this is kind of the most vanilla sounding adventure I couldn't even tell you what this adventure is about because it's so vanilla sounding. It's like the Kobold Chieftain's Crown, like, all right, well, we could call that like the scaly hell of the Psycho Ward, I mean, so it's
well, and what's neat about that, Michael, is that it doesn't stop with just the words, right? It doesn't just stop with the titles. I mean, when you grab the book, the cover tells you exactly what you're about to open, and there's multiple covers, and you start going through and looking at the art. This is art that is not made anymore, and it's very evocative of a different time, and that obviously must have been a very conscious choice.
Yes, it's a shame that all of us here are basically the word monkeys, for better words, and we don't have any of the artists on, because art is always on Joseph's mind, to the point where like all of the work that we do, all the work that Goodman Games commissions and everything, it's all in a physical medium. Like we don't use any digital art. It's everybody is usually like a actual pen or ink or on actual board and stuff. I mean, so it's no Photoshop. I mean, I think we have some pieces that still use zip tone. Like, I mean, that's so. I mean, Joe is very aware of the art decisions that are made. So.
there was in the original creation of the game. I don't know if the rest of you guys were involved with this or not, but there was an email chain where Joseph said, like, give me a list of different scenes that would make great artwork for the core book or whatever. And so a bunch of us, like, I remember coming up with like 20 or 30 different, like, just phrases that would make great artwork. And then when the core book came out, like, I was like, that was my idea.
That's cool.
I remember saying that. And I'm proud to say that Russ Nicholson drew a lot of mine. So.
And look where you are now, Dieter.
Right?
So, Harley, there's a lot of different ways to ask this question. I'm going to try it one way and let's see if it works. I come to you and I say, all right, look, Harley, we're going to put out the next edition of DCC and we're going to go ahead and drop this mechanic. And you're like, well, then we can't call it DCC anymore. Is there something in the game that you think is critical to making it what it is?
Wow, that's a great. I would actually like to hear everybody else's answers. But I mean, I can
go with your gut. What's your gut instinct? What's the first thing?
I'm just such a fan of Warriors and Mighty Deed of Arms, and just in many other role playing games, you give the new player the fighter or the warrior or the fighting man because it's the simplest of the mechanics to run with. It's like, well, you just take this die with 20 faces and you roll it, and we'll tell you if you hit the thing. But when you get to Dungeon Crawl Classics, this notion, this Mighty Deed of Arms that it does away with all feats, and in the place of all those feats, a warrior can attempt like almost literally anything as long as it goes with the fiction of the game. And so you're swinging across chandeliers and you're breaking the horns off minotaurs and then stabbing them in the chest, and you're like throwing demons back through the portals, and that all goes back to the Mighty Deed of Arms. There's no feat governing that. No judge is going to step forward and say, well, you don't have the bull rush feat, you can't force that demon through. And so for me it's Mighty Deed of Arms.
Well, now we got to do the round table. So how about for you, Brendan? What do you think is something that makes the game, and if we were to take it out, it wouldn't be the game anymore?
Sure. I'll say Spellburn. The idea that a wizard can actually, trade a bit of their soul, that they can, power their spells through blood and sacrifice and pain and make an effect larger than they normally could by making that trade-off. I think I think that really speaks a lot to the flavor of the game and also the individual mechanics. I think that without that, it absolutely wouldn't be the same. And when I've played games with, say, people playing spellcasters who either ignored that mechanic altogether or played super conservatively, it didn't feel right.
Yeah.
It should be. I love the idea of these wizards. Doug Kovacs describes them as in DCC, wizards are like junkies. You know what I mean? Who just are always trying to hit that next big high. They shouldn't mess around with it, but they have to mess with it. And I love that description, and I think it's very apt. I think without Spellburn, I don't think it's DCC.
All right, Dieter.
Similar, I think, the spell check in general. Like the fact that spells do not do the same thing every time you cast them. That is the big thing for me. Magic should be wild and unpredictable.
Can you give us a little bit more details on that for people? Because it is a fascinating mechanic and responsible for 80% of the book.
Yeah, it's a big part of the rule book, but it's worth it. It's totally worth it. So the basic mechanic is you roll a d20 and you add your level and intelligence modifier or whatever and compare it to the table for the spell you're casting. And you may fail to cast the spell. You may cast it. You could cast one magic missile that does 1 point of damage, or you could cast 100 magic missiles that can hit your enemy anywhere on the same plane of existence as you. And there's always the chance that you have a critical failure and you end up with warts or 5 arms or whatever. It's great fun.
And it's so cool because and to reinforce this, every spell has its own table, right? So this is not just a generic effect table. Each of these spells are crafted that way. Dieter, are you at all responsible for any of those tables?
I am not responsible for any of those tables. I did help write the Mercurial Magic table, though, and that's the other thing. For anyone who doesn't know, each spellcaster always learns a spell a little bit differently, so each spell also has a little side effect.
Oh, it's so cool. It's so cool. How about for you, Michael? What is the signature piece for you? What makes DCC the game?
I am so glad that nobody else chose this one, because for me this is every day of the week, twice on Sunday. But luck and the luck mechanic. This is if it is not luck, if luck is not involved in the game, it is not DCC, because it is the simplest mechanic whatsoever. Out of the, if you are familiar with D&D, you are familiar with the 6 stats, strength, constitution, dexterity, intelligence, wisdom, and charisma. Well, we use slightly different stats. We use strength, agility, stamina, intelligence, personality. We could kind of take wisdom and charisma and roll them into one, leaving us with the luck stat. And luck, I am very big as I've gotten older with encouraging player agency. Allowing players to have a say into not being completely slaves to the dice. So the way that the luck works is you can spend luck in DCC to basically bump up a dice score. For every point of luck you spend, it gets +1. So if you really need to hit that monster in order to get that mighty deed off to rip those minotaurs horns off its head, you can spend that 2 points of luck to make sure the attack hits, and then succeed doing the mighty deed. But of course the thing is that you're never required to spend luck, and when you spend luck, it's a choice, because luck for the most part is not easy to recover. So, and then there are times in the course of the game where you have to make a luck check, and you make a luck check by rolling your current luck or less on a D20 or a D30 or whatever. Some things are harder than others. So, you might have to spend those 10 points to really get that wizard, but if you have to make a luck check and your luck is now 4, and that luck check could be if you are mostly dead or completely dead, So I have spent a lot of time thinking about the luck economy in DCC. It's something Doug Kovacs and I talked about, because in DCC, what we call core DCC, there's the halfling class, which is basically the luck battery. Like every point of luck they spend is worth 2, and they can spend it to help out all their other friends.
Oh, wow.
And they regain luck every day. Thieves get the same way, but they can just spend it to help themselves. So when we were doing Lankmar, we said we didn't have halflings. So we're like, how are we going to play around with the luck mechanic? And that came up with something which we call fleeting luck, which is basically a way to spend luck within the group. But it's a really simple thing. It rewards you for doing stuff that is in that Appendix N, that Fritz Leiber, Fafford, and Grey Mouser, stuff. But at the same time, at any moment, all of that gain luck can just go away. So it really encourages you to spend it before it is gone. So there's none of that. I'm just going to sit here and accumulate luck all for 4 hours, and then when it comes to the big bad guy, I'm going to spend all of it and win the game. And I love the luck mechanic. I think I think every time we come up with like a new version or something else with that uses DCC mechanic, there's always like, should we use straight luck or should we do something interesting right now? So for me, it's the luck mechanic. If luck's not there, I might as well be playing Dungeons and Dragons.
So my hope is by asking this question, and I'm going to mark this as a huge success, we would start to capture where this passion comes from the players, right? And I think that these 4 guys really did a neat job of capturing their own version of that, because it is, I talk about how familiar the game felt at the first flip through. But as I start digging into it, as I start exploring it, you start to realize, to quote Michael, there's choices that were made, and they were not as random as the game is random choices. They're very deliberate, and there's a thematic feel of consistency from mechanics to the artwork to the text to the all of those decisions, and I think we did a good job talking through that. So guys, we're going to take a quick break. When we get back from this break, I want to talk about 2 things that always come up if you're going to mention DCC to somebody, and that's the idea of the funnel, and then we already talked to Tom from Impact Miniatures. We're going to talk about the dice. We'll be right back.
This is Sean. You may have heard of me from such movies as Brett and Sean Go to Illinois, 2 Motorcycles, 1 Stick of Dynamite, and Gaming and BS. What kind of RPG podcast is that? After my NFTs were stolen, I decided to become a patron of Third Floor Wars. The content is great and it costs me less than a good shot of liquor. So consider becoming a patron. It may just land you your next big role. Head over to patreon.com/Third Floor Wars. Tell Craig Sean sent you.
So like I mentioned, when the conversation of DCC comes up, there's two things that you're guaranteed are going to be discussed. And the first one I want to talk about is a thing called the funnel, which is exactly what it sounds like. There's no point in me describing it. So Harley, how do we describe what the hell a funnel is?
Well, okay, so it's monikers. You often hear it called a meat grinder. But a funnel is when a new campaign is starting, and each player brings 3 or 4 randomly generated 0-level characters to the table. There's no backstory apart from their occupation. There's no equipment apart from like the gravedigger might have a shovel, and then everyone kind of they come with their trade goods. So a gravedigger might have some a pound of grave soil, whereas the farmer brings his goat. And so with these 4 characters in front of me, and that's true for everybody else around the table, they very quickly run into the sharp edge of a dungeon, and one by one get winnowed down until hopefully you have 1, possibly 2 PCs left, and they're very rarely the ones you fall in love with. It's a truism, but it happens all the time. You have that one character with great stats that you manage to roll, and you keep them at the back of the line, and for whatever reason, it's the one-armed jerk at the front with just 2 hit points, and he has a 5 intelligence, and you really wanted to play a wizard this time, and that's the guy that makes it through to the other side, and well, damn it, that's my wizard now. And so but it gives you the ability that you because you fall in love with that guy over the course of the 3 hours of watching all his companions die around him, and then all of a sudden it's like, man, I love this 5 intelligence wizard that, damn it, he's survived this 0-level funnel. He made it to first level. He has magic missile, which is only going to go off when he rolls like a 20 or better, but damn it, that's my magic user. That's my wizard. And there's no other wizards like him. And the through playing through that initial 0-level adventure, that's where the backstory is. And so it's really easy in that there's no downtime. If I'm running a game and like all of Dieter's PCs drop because they charged into the pit, well, I give him 5 minutes and he'll be back with four new characters. And there's the cursing is also the curse is also the blessing, in that it's really easy to get a player back in the game.
Yeah, that's really cool. And now, Harley, if I go back and read 3.5 and I tried to distill that down, I would not come up with a funnel, right? The funnel was not in 3.5. So where did the funnel come from? Do you know?
Well, that's entirely that's a Joseph Goodman. When he was taking those 2 weeks on the beach, and it literally is. It was amazing. Like he would email us, and there would be like another 15 pages the next day. Like the core mechanics, the structure, the bones of DCC was generated in a very small period of time.
Interesting.
Of Joseph reading and writing and spitting all this out. And part of that was the funnel, that there wasn't going to be a backstory. You could sit down with your cousins and your nieces and your nephews, and you're like, all right, here's 3d6, roll them, add them all together, you're ready to go, and get right to the adventure.
I think I haven't had a conversation with Joseph about it ever, but I feel like some of it comes from the idea that all heroes were regular people before they were heroes. And so much of it does just come down to luck. Who is in the right place at the right time, they become the hero.
Yeah.
If I can interject too, because I have yet another aspect to this. I don't know where he specifically came up with the funnel idea, but I think I have a pretty good handle on what he was trying to evoke, and that was he wanted to get that old school style of play where it took you literally 10 minutes to make up a first level character in Moldvay or BX, everything like. So you would go into adventure and they would get killed, and then so you would make up another character. I was literally running a BX campaign. campaign, and if there was a fight, one of my players, like if his character died in a fight, his goal was to roll up a new character and get that character in the same fight that killed his other character. Like, you know, like that, like suddenly this guy comes running around the corner and there's like leaps in there. So he wanted, because, and it's that one character that survives to third level. Like I've always said that, you know, like prior to creating background and buying feats and taking all the rest of this stuff, I never had a good idea on what my character was until I hit third level, because at that point I had like the experience to it and I had an idea in my head of what he was like. The funnel basically distills all of that into a single session, because you have that character, his buddies die, there is a death toll around there, but the one who manages to get out there and become a first level character, that is the character that you now have that backstory to, that you didn't have to sit down and you're like, okay, I'm going to take this background and this feat to represent that and all the rest, and buy this skill because he was enslaved by sailors and whatever it is. It's just, yeah, he was the one who was smart enough to throw the goat at the she-demon and managed to get out of there alive. So I know that's what he was trying to evoke with the funnel, and I think he did a great job in doing so.
Yeah, without question. Now, I'm going to go out on a limb, Brendan, and I'm going to assume that you have run more than one funnel in your time. So it seems like the funnel does a lot of things, right? It allows us to figure out who our character is going to be, where they came from peasant to scoundrel and adventurer. The other thing that the funnel does is creates memories and creates great stories that you're going to tell away from the table. So Brendan, for you, what is one of your favorite funnel stories?
Okay, so I run a funnel called The Accursed Heart of the World Ender.
It's a great name.
Thank you. Yeah, it's one of the great things about a funnel is that to a character with 1d4 hit points and a +0 to hit and everything, it may as well be Satan. You know what I'm saying? Like an orc. So you can really scale up these monsters. So they actually have to fight this world-ending demon. And at one part of the demon's thing is he's vulnerable for a short period of time, and the characters in the funnel are all running around. I had a character who will be in my heart forever, a player in my heart forever, and one of the items that could be a danger to this demon got like loose in the rest of the party, and his one character wanted to take it and aid the demon, and his other character wanted to take it to destroy the demon. Amazing. And they fought to the death with him playing both roles in my thing, and I was just like,
oh, isn't that something?
Oh man, it made me want to have kids. It was like a 15-year-old. I was like, why can't my boy grow up like that? You know what I mean? It was just a beautiful moment. So that's one of my, if you want a favorite memory, that's one of my absolute all-time favorite memories.
Oh, all right. So that was great. Anybody else want to share a quick memory?
My favorite funnel memory is actually from Hole in the Sky that Brendan wrote. In all my years of gaming, that is the only adventure I have ever had a TPK in as a DM.
Wow.
So that one's special to me.
How about for you, Harley? What is a funnel story that just pops into your head when someone says funnel?
We had I was running at Genghis Khan down in Denver. It was early playtests, and one of the characters had lost his arm in the game before, and he came back to play the next game, but he had literally one hit point, but he was carrying this grimoire from the prior game. And so 4 hours, they're being chased by orcas, through hell, and there's like PCs, 0-level characters dying left and right, as they should, right? And this character, it is Black Dougal is what he had named him, which is hilarious because we were playing with, we didn't have, Doug was big in our minds, but he named his character Black Dougal. He made it through the entire game, with his 2 hit points and his just his one arm holding onto the grimoire, and at one point, a demon is grabbing him by the leg, trying to haul him back to hell, and it's those moments, and I know the rest of you guys have all had it. Like, they don't come often, but there's those moments when everybody's looking at it, and it's like objectively, this is a stupid mechanic. There's no way we can control this. Oh, that was my answer from before. It should have been rolling dice out in the open. But we're all staring at the table, and you're like, in your heart, you're like, okay, like I've been slaughtering PCs this entire game. There's 60 crumpled sheets of paper on the floor all around me, and you see that D20 come rolling out, and it's a 20, and everybody screams, and you're just as happy as the players, because it's like, and you can't script it because we're all rolling out in the open.
Yep.
But and you throw these, and it's awesome, right? Like you almost like to write a good DCC adventure, like you make an impossible problem to solve, and you see what the players come up with, and it's just, I don't know, there's some of the moments that are fondest in my life, just seeing these players have this triumph and just living into it so strongly.
So part of what puts but it didn't put me on. I knew DCC before this conversation happened, but it pushed it to the forefront for me, and really was what tipped me over to buy the original book. Because I interviewed Tom from Impact Miniatures, because we were talking about the work he does and the dice he makes, and he talked about the work that he does with you guys to put out the amazing dice. And I don't think I realized that until I talked to him. And Michael, it's a really interesting choice. Right? A really interesting choice. And I'm not saying a bad choice by saying that, but if I look at the book, and we talk about it being evocative of the older, of the white box, of the BX, and so on and so forth, this is a hard right turn, right? This is a hard right turn from that mold, and really from anything else that's out there, this dice chain idea. Can we talk about why it's there and what it is?
Yes, we can, because there are two answers to that. And again, this demonstrates Joe's wisdom when he was designing this game. Now, it's actually funny that you say it's like it doesn't seem like it goes totally against what we were doing with like with the box sets and everything like that. Yeah. But that's actually was forefront in Joe's mind, because the idea is that if you remember, we all talked about like our first experiences with role playing game, is that the first time you saw a D20 or a D8 or a D12, your little mind was blown. There was all like these weird dice. So if you're the most jaded person, you have the biggest collection, you have whatsoever, suddenly you get DCC and you're like, I do not own a D7. I do not own a D24. Like, this is ridiculous. And then it's funny. It's like, because some people like totally resist why do I need to buy weird dice to play this game? And it's just like, say that again, but slower. And then they realize, oh yeah, it's like, hey, this excuse could buy more dice. So Joe definitely wanted, again,
that's
was
neat.
Trying to evoke a like that original feeling that you have when you're introduced to the hobby, amongst us, the jaded grognards and people who are just learning to play the game for the first time, So that was part of it. But the other decision was it going back very much to streamlining everything. Like if you look at 3.5, it's just like there's a tax of opportunity, and if you're flanking, you get this +2 bonus, and then if you're doing this, it's a -3 bonus, and I'm proficient in this or I'm not proficient in that, and everything like that. It's like I ran a Pathfinder game at one point. We ran for a while, and eventually there's a reason that some people derogatively call it to Pathfinder. I mean, if that's your jam, that's great. I mean, do it and everything. But it gets to a point where just like there are just too many modifiers for my aging brain to think about. So if all I can think about is like, hey, yes, you are having better advantage of this. You have the high ground, Anakin. Roll that D24 instead of or roll a D30. And you have not lived until you have seen a first level wizard like, okay, I'm going to cast Magic Missile, and you can say, all right, because of this one, I can roll this D30, and they're like half the time they've never even touched a D30, let alone the fact they get to roll it now, and they could get a 28 unmodified. Yep. So there's a lot of thought to it. The idea is to evoke that original experience that we all went through when we first discovered those weird dice, no matter how jaded we are, no matter how long you've been playing the hobby, and just to make things a heck of a lot simpler.
Yeah. Yep.
Well, we should take a moment and put to rest the misunderstanding. Like, oftentimes I'll see the game reviewed and everyone's like, oh, it's so clever that Joseph made this game to sell these dice of his, and you rewind 8 years, like, this was the best game you could play, but there were no dice anywhere. The game was never made for the dice. The game was made because Joseph loves Lou Zocchi and his insane dice, and thank God Tom from Impact came along, because you couldn't find the dice to run the game.
Yep.
You know, it wasn't us selling. We're not in the dice business.
Gen Con 2014, that was like the first time we were back, and you know, because Joe had a kid and we took a break and everything like that, so we weren't there. Like, I think you and Doug were there unofficially, like in 2012 when DCC came back.
We were. Yeah, you couldn't find the book.
We were there until 2014, and it was just like, this is a great game. Where do I get the dice? And like somebody found out like somebody was selling like the Who Knew dice set, which had like all of their like. So we were all like, go to that booth over there, and like we were throwing business to somebody else. And this was before Impact came on, so you know,
Thank goodness they came along. I mean, you know, yeah.
So. In your mind, Dieter, does the dice chain get amplified more than it should be, right? So it's always talked about. It's always going to be early in the conversation. People review the game. It's going to be a big part of the conversation. Is it overblown, or is it a critical part of the game?
Oh no, I don't think it's necessarily a critical part of the game. You can give modifiers instead of using the dice chain if that's how you want to play. Absolutely. And you don't necessarily even need the weird dice. You can skip those dice in the dice chain, or you can, you know, roll a D20 divided by 2, subtract 2, whatever, to get, you know, the numbers you need. So no, it's not a requirement by any means, but it does make it so much easier to just, you know, assign modifiers on the fly, whatever. It'd be like roll a D24 instead of a D20 because you have high ground, or you know, you've got 20 people holding down your arms, roll a D6 instead of a D20. You know?
Well, it's neat to me because, again, I found it interesting how evocative it is, right? And it takes us back to how we started this podcast. Is those, you know, I sat down with my babysitter, I sat down with my older brother, and we had all these weird dice, and we were, you know, rolled up a character sheets, and in a lot of ways, this is a huge love letter to those moments when that first happens. So, guys, we're going to take one more break. When we get back from this break, I want to talk about the unbelievable amount of accessories, modules, and extra things that are available for this game. It's incredible, and I cannot oversell it. So when we get back, let's talk about the supplements. This is the part of many podcasts where someone comes on, interrupts the show, and explains that you should consider paying for the content that you're listening to right now for free. That pitchman explains by giving $1 or more a month, you not only support the show, but you allow the show to grow and improve. Here on the third floor, we refuse to interrupt your episode of Tabletop Talk with such time-wasting pleas. We pledge never to run a spot asking you to go to patreon.com and give $1 or more a month, because supporting content creators keeps the content coming. Even if there is a link in the show's description, and there is, we don't ask you to click it and become a patron. We don't waste time rambling about the benefits like early access to episodes, getting episodes without ad breaks like this, or even getting a chance to play in one of Craig's RPG sessions. Anyway, enjoy this episode knowing Tabletop Talk, despite being supported by its patrons, won't engage in such blatant appeals for support. We could do a whole series of podcasts, right, about the supplements and the modules that are available for DCC. And getting ready for this, I was trying to figure out like what the hell, how the hell am I going to cover all of this? So the first thing is just go to the website. That's the first thing that you need to do when you get done listening to this. Go to the website and just see how much is out there and just how cool it is and all the different flavors that we see. So I think the way that I want to talk about this is, and I think we'll start with you, Brendan. Let's talk about one. And it can either be one that you were a part of or one that somebody else was a part of. But I would like to share a concept, an idea. What is one of those DCC X's that we need to make sure everybody listening knows about?
So one of the DCC adventures or things that's out there that everyone should try. You know what? Okay, it's very easy for me to go today because I have been rereading the Shutter Mountains today. So if you want to try a different, rather a lot, and yesterday too. So if Shutter Mountains is a setting for Dungeon Crawl Classics, it takes place in a fantasy Appalachia. So this is it's American-based fantasy, which I've always been. That's always been kind of like my thing. I've always, I love to see fantasy. I love Tolkien. I love the whole British thing, but I love to see it. I love to see what we're doing too over on this side of things. So I would say to see what you can do with a fantasy game and how what American fantasy looks like, I would say I very much recommend. Shutter Mountain has this wonderful deep flavor. It's this. You're out here in the mountains. There is a one god, the sovereign, who everyone kind of go through. There's the whole Melly Wade Wellman vibe, which is of course part of the Appendix N that a lot of people don't pay a whole lot of attention to. So all of that, Michael Curtis is the one who first wrote the Chained Coffin, and then created this entire, sort of like it's a fantasy genre. I've never seen Appalachian role-playing until this, and I think it's done in a sensitive way. I think it's done in a way where it's not just like a bunch of, hillbilly jokes or whatever.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So if you're going to try one thing outside of the mainstream settings for DCC, I would definitely try Shutter Mountains / Chained Coffin.
I just sent you your Venmo money right there, Brendan. So thank you very much for that. So that chime you hear is no.
So I want to take you back, Brendan, to the moment before you wrote one. And then pen started to hit paper. And before pen started to hit paper, there's a whole lot of shit going on in your head. Can you kind of walk me through how things, one of the modules that you were a part of, how it went from up here and what it looked like, and then how it ended up on the page?
All right, so I will talk about Hole in the Sky, which Dieter mentioned, which was my first ever Dungeon Crawl Classics thing. So I was so excited reading the core book and getting into it, and I was like, I have to write my own funnel. And to this day, I think if you're going to be a designer, even if you're just going to write for your home group, I think that the DCC judge creating your funnel, I think it's an act akin to like the Jedi making his lightsaber. You know what I'm saying? It's sort of like
absolutely.
You know what I'm saying? Like it's like this is where you put your stamp on the game and say, this is how I think it should go. This is what I think it should be like. So I wrote this very long breakdown of an idea I had. Like I said, DCC was always very metal to me, and I really drew a lot of inspiration from metal, heavy metal videos of my youth. I'm not the world's biggest metalhead. I had a very intense, brief metal period in like the 80s, and so I sent Joseph this whole long screed, and I said, this is what I want to do. He was like, no, can't do it, no. But this bit, that's good,
That's something.
Yeah. So he said, take this little tiny bit here and expand that.
And what was that bit?
It was the idea of size. I wanted to do. I really loved in Jack Vance when the wizard's name just flew out of my head in Dying Earth. But the one has the other one trapped in the little Terrasac box with the dragon that's chasing him around the 5-cornered maze. It's Turgid of Mir, and I forget the other one.
That's fine. That's fine.
Yeah. So, like I said, I really wanted to do something with size. In my original concept, there was this party at the castle, and then there was this huge explosion, and everybody is dead except for the peasants, and even they, like, I had a whole chart made up for like debris raining down on people, where you would either die or get like a sword or a piece of gold or whatever, but in the middle of it was this huge mask. And that was the beginning of the adventure. This enormous, 100-foot long mask, and what did that mean? So he liked that. So 3 iterations later, I finally said, "How about this?" And I pitched him what was basically a Hole in the Sky, and he said, "Oh, that'll work." So I ran it that day for some friends, and I started running it at conventions. I probably ran it maybe a dozen times before I actually started writing it, but then I put it down. He didn't, once we had gone through the process of him sort of like saying, more Appendix N, more Appendix N, more Appendix N, once we had gotten through that, like, I feel like the final version was pretty solid. Like he didn't ask for huge big changes. And in some ways, the mechanics was actually a reaction to Harley's amazing funnel, which was the Sailors in the Starless Sea, like the classic funnel.
The classic, yeah.
Yeah. So that was the first thing I ever ran in DCC for my friends. And at the end, when they all leveled up, I had a hand go up, and my boy Dwayne, who some of you all have met, Dwayne's like, he's like, hey, how do I change my lucky sign? I got like a magical healing. I ain't no healer. What do I do? I'm like, you just got a lucky sign. Oh no, that's what? And yet he yelled. You know what I mean? He was real and happy about that. So part of what can happen in Hole in the Sky, I reacted to that, and there's actually in the end, if you make it all the way through, you have an opportunity to change your stars, which may allow you, if you're lucky, to actually change your lucky sign. Basically, to change the stars you were born under.
Right.
So that came right out of Harley's thing right there.
That's cool. So Brendan, tonight when you're sleeping, I'm going to break into your home and I'm going to find the original notes that you started jotting down as you were running this and all these conventions. And then I'm going to grab my printed copy and I'm going to put them next to each other. What am I going to see in these handwritten notes that I will see in this beautiful printed copy?
Okay, so the main thing you'll see in the original things, beyond a lot of cross-outs and notes to myself, is that at the last minute I changed the names of everything that was in there. So all of the principles, like I had a thing I was calling them in convention, and then when I actually sat down to write it, I was like, it just looked funny on the page. You know what I mean? And you can't, you know what I mean? I was like, nah. So all the names will have changed. You will notice that one thing you will absolutely notice is how bad my legendary bad map making skills actually are. Okay, so it's not, it's not. That's not hype. I'm really not good at drawing maps. So you will see the original. It was more like a flow chart. It was like you go to here and you go to here, and then there's a thing. And in my mind, it's very vivid in my mind, but you don't need a map for it in my mind. I just describe how it looks, and so you would see how bad my maps were as well.
That's great. So Dieter, as someone, I've sent them to the Goodman website. They're going through just pages and pages of all these beautiful, crazy covers and great, crazy titles. What is one of them for you that you think is significant and really evokes the game well?
When I'm working at the booth at the convention, and I get asked all the time, what is the one adventure that I need to buy?
Are you saying this is not an original question, Dieter?
Right.
God damn it.
I'm prepared to answer this one.
I have them already.
Obviously, the chained coffins. Obviously, Sailors on the Starless Sea is the one everybody needs. That's like the funnel that all other funnels are judged against.
Why?
But the probably it was the first one for starters, but it's also just so big. Like it is not one you can really complete in one setting. It's pretty epic. It's just epic. It's deadly. It's
the fight on the ziggurat is again and again and again is always amazing. You're literally a bunch of 0 level characters and you have to fight a Chaos Lord. And I love that about DC.
That's great. But the other adventure that I always tell people to get is Chaos Rising, which is actually a compilation of 5 shorter adventures that run from level 1 to level 5. So that gives you kind of an idea of how the game scales as you go, and it gives you an adventure for each level, and they're good adventures too.
That's cool. Michael, you're going to go last for obvious reasons when we talk about supplements, but Harley, how about for you? As you think about all of these, DCC 100 for crying out loud, as we talk about each one of these, is there standouts for you that someone listening has to at least go take a look at?
I can't give Mike's answer, but whatever Michael says is that's the one I'm choosing, because the chance to work in Fritz Leiber's world, that changed the whole that changed everything. I think one of the really a pivotal moment for me as a gamer was when I was growing up. I would walk into Toys R Us, and I don't know, maybe I'm, it is.
We super dated ourselves with that, but keep going.
That's all right. You walk in, and at least in, I spent a year in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and you look up on the left just as you walked in, and there was these TSR shelves that were like twice as tall as me, and it felt like they went for like 50 feet. And I walked in, and you walk in, and there are all these adventures bound in shrink wrap, and it just seemed like there would never be any end to them. And I carried that with me, into adulthood. Even as I had moved on from D&D initially, and I had started playing some other games, it's like, wow, whatever. Excuse me, whatever they were building in Wisconsin, there's just got to be a safe. Even after TSR went out of business, there's a safe somewhere just stacked with the next 150 manuscripts. And then somebody introduced me to the Assaim, and I was like, oh my god, no, they're finite. And this illusion I had been living with for half my life was wrong. You could catalog, these worlds of wonder and these worlds of the imagination, and they were finite. And then you get to DCC, where Joseph has been so generous with the license. It's a free license that anyone that meets the content standards, and gives them the opportunity to review, but the worlds are literally limitless. You could collect all the Dungeon Crawl classics. You could find everything written by Brendan and Dieter and Michael and Harley. But you start to look around, and you're like, oh my god, Crawl Zine and Crawl Jammer and these zines that have flourished and were brilliant and have faded into obscurity. And there's a volume of support by third-party publishers, all done out of love of the game. We're very fortunate in that DCC is still somewhat obscure, and that it wasn't like the 3.5 glut where everyone, I'm going to make a supers version of this because I know it's Wizards on the Coast and somebody's going to buy it. All these are all labors of love that. Because no third-party publisher is going to get rich off of it, so they're all this is what matters to them most in gaming, and the DCC's engine is so simple and just so streamlined enough that they can attach what matters most in this. It could be pirates, it could be pirates in space, it could be it's
at this point you can play the DCC rules in any setting you can imagine, and probably several you can't imagine.
And it's not a weird bolting on, because the system is robust enough that it can support those mechanics, and there's no end. And so you start diving in, and it's like, oh well, I want something like this, and if you can't find it, and it's what you love more than life itself, you can write it. Right. And then the next thing you know, it's like, well, I and then you come back, and then that person has now made their own zine that they're publishing, which you can order from the website, hosted by Goodman Games, and it'll be supported by the zero level generator, by Purple Sorcerer, and it's just that wealth of opportunity and options. And it's still wide open, right? The best DCC adventure has not been written yet. There's some kid coming up, and
I'm working on it.
No,
I'm taking money from Harley now. That's it.
It's some girl that's 9 years old and just discovering dice for the first time, and all of a sudden, she has this system that she can write to, and she can run for her friends, and it's going to blow the minds of everybody that gets a chance to look at it. And so that's a long way of not answering your question.
Well done.
But yeah, there's so much opportunity to just pour your love and passion into the game and see it reciprocated by other. Every player, every judge is a creator, and every creator is a judge, and and when we get together at these conventions, it was so cool. Sorry, I'll shut up in a second. But for a long time, John Hirschberger was responsible for organizing our booth and all the third party offerings, and it just crept, and our booth kept getting bigger. But the third party supplements, they started to creep around the side, and we were stacking them as densely as we could. there's a lot out there, and it's all made from the heart by somebody who is really passionate about their iteration of Dungeon Crawl Classics.
It's a living, breathing testament, right? And you see this every once in a while, but it's not common. You see every once in a while a system will come across that just the community jumps on and just starts creating stuff, and it's a testament to the system. So, Michael, I purposely saved you for last for obvious reasons. I want to talk about the beginnings of your setting. Well, what became your setting, right? It's not your setting, but like
which one?
Where for Lankmar? Lankmar.
Okay.
Where? Which one? Jerk. When did that conversation start?
Okay. All right. So before I get there, because I want to answer, I want to provide my own answer to the question that you gave to everybody else, because Harley, by prefacing his answer that I didn't want to steal Mike Curtis's question, has stolen my answer. Because basically, what I was going to say is that the best supplement, the best accessory that Dungeon Crawl Classics has produced in the now 10 years it has been out, and this is something that even Joe could not foresee when he was, despite all the forward thinking he had when he was designing the game, could not have in mind, and that is the community of fans. I have been involved in a lot of different fan communities over the years, some before the internet where you had to meet jerks face to face. You couldn't just dial up the internet and meet them online, literally, I don't know if it's just we have a great birth auger, like we just roll really well, but the DCC community has literally been one of the most positive, one of the most accepting. I mean, the fact that, as Harley was saying, they are some of the most creative people. The running joke is that Joe wanted to produce the DCC annual like the first year after DCC was out, when that was going to be like us like filling in some of the blanks and everything. And it took like 6-8 years for us to come out with the annual, just because the fan community basically made us obsolete. They were putting out stuff that we had to step up our game. We were looking at something like, this is crap compared to what somebody else is cranking out, at home and everything. And in my role now is that I spend a lot of time talking with people, especially some of the young, because there are players in the community who literally had pigtails when they first sat down at our tables and are now like in college and everything. So they're not, neckbeard grognards who have been playing since 1980, 1979 or anything. They're picking this game up, relatively recently. And I always ask them, it's like, why is it that you're playing DCC and not like 5e or anything else, Fate or, Powered by the Apocalypse or something like that. And 9 times out of 10, the answer is the community. Which doesn't do me a lick of good, because I can't find a way to package the community yet. So it's just like, you have to discover the community. But I seriously, is that just the sheer creativity that everybody puts out is just absolutely amazing. There's no way Joe could have anticipated this love, but eventually, when he was doing this, he was following his gut, and there were other people who felt this way. So so we're all here, and the fact that I have the job which I have now is because that people for the last 10 years have been saying, I want this, but I want more of it, and it's literally. The DCC rulebook is there's no splat books, there's no anything else. It's like you can buy the soft cover book, $25. You can buy a set of dice for $25. All right, that's like less than $50. You don't have to buy a single thing from us ever again, because that's all you need. But once you start playing that, you're gonna be like, oh, I want more of this. And and whether it's coming from us, whether it's coming from the community, I mean, what Harley's saying, how many other companies out there have a third-party license, but like at Gen Con, they literally have like an entire set of their booth, which is just set aside for people who literally I did a run of 1,000 of these at Staples. And it's sitting there. It's sitting there next to like the Lankmar box set. It's sitting there next to Frozen in Time. It's sitting next to Purple Planet. It's all there with everything else is official. If you're going to do it, please put your how much it costs on it. I will advise that.
God, yes.
But we will sell it and everything. So
that's awesome.
So that out of the way. Let's go back to
but I'm not going to let you go yet quite on that, because the one comment I'll make about that is, obviously luck is a factor as far as a community, right? And a lot of that is, where does it start, right? When the community starts, you get a few people in there that kind of set the tone for the community, and it grows and it grows. And there's a luck factor, but it's not all luck. And part of it, you have to give credit to Joe, right? And to what he created, and then the people that he brought in with him, right? That set the tone and tilled the field early, right? And that's super important.
I have a theory.
Ooh.
I believe that the DCC character funnel self-selects for the best players.
Interesting.
All right, so if you get together a whole bunch of gamers from, just from every group and say, okay, I want to introduce you to a new game. I'm going to give you 4 0-level characters. They will basically be helpless. You'll have, sticks and rocks and terrible weapons, no armor, and you're going up against demons and horrifying things. It'll be really bloody. You're going to lose most of your characters, but if you survive, that character will then go on to be something and have this amazing story behind them. The players who go, yes, why aren't we doing that right now? Those are going to be the people who are down for what I feel like is the absolute pinnacle of gaming, which is fun at the table.
Yeah.
That's really the only fact that really matters. I think that the people who are like, nah, I really like to tailor a character around my concept, and you know what I mean? That's a way to play, and I've had a lot of fun playing like that and with those players. But I think that when you set I think the community is kind of like self-selects by people who are into the very idea of that. The kind of people who are like, kamikaze, let's see how many guys I can kill tonight. That's fun.
That is, yeah, and it has a magnetic force, right? That brings in a certain type of player that has a certain approach to gaming, which isn't necessarily the right or wrong approach, to your point, Brendan, but it is now, it's now the orbit, right? And yeah, exactly. Very, very cool. All right, back to my freaking original question.
We've got more to say.
So, Michael, I'm really fascinated to know how Lankmark came to be, because it's a big deal. When did the conversation start? When did it first get brought up?
So, all right. So what happened is, of course, we can't lay claim to it. That entirely goes to Fritz Leiber and Harry Otto Fischer, who started, during the Depression, started write. Basically, they were writing fanfic to one another. So they're like, all right, you're a barbarian, I'm a thief. What do we get up to? And then that just turned eventually into the line of stories. The Lankmar stuff has been adapted several times. Like TSR did it back. They were the first to do it, and then I know Mongoose had it for a while, and the Pinnacle had it for a while. And I remember that there was a day where Joe occasionally will send an email which just consists of a picture. and one day we got a picture which was taken from his cell phone or so. This might have been taken from like a little actually a digital camera. I don't know if Joe actually had a cell phone because it goes far enough back. But it was literally just a picture of the contract with the Leiber estate.
Oh wow!
And then that we got that, and we were like, does this mean what I think this means? I says, oh yes, it does. And so I was ecstatic, because I was introduced to Lankmar through Deities and Demigods. That I had never even heard. I never read any of the Lankmar stories until '88 or '80 or maybe even '90, because like the last one, Knights and Knaves of Lankmar, Knights and Knaves of Swords came out. I bought it at a spinner rack in a pharmacy. Like, hey, I think I know who these guys are, and I read it and like, this is nothing like the Deities and Demigods, write up in it, because at this point it was the last stories and they weren't in Lankmar and all the rest of that stuff. But there was something about it that I loved. And I finally got a chance to read the stories in college, because my college library had all of them. That had, Swords Against Devilry, Swords Against Death, and everything. And I literally, over the course of like a week, just took one out, brought it back to my dorm room, read the entire thing, returned it, took the next one out, set it, and it completely changed the way that I approached role playing whatsoever. Like I had totally like before it was like Dragonlance, and then I read this, and it was like, oh, this is all this. This is knights in the back and night markets and all the rest of that stuff. And none of this crap, So I've always been a huge fan of it. And then when Joe sent around that email, so we knew we got the license. And at Gen Con, we had kind of a powwow. We had everybody got together after we shut down the booth for the day. We all went to one of the restaurants in Indy. I don't remember where it is. But I don't remember what the name of it was. Whatever. But Harley was there. Doug was there. Brendan, I don't know if you were there or not. But I don't know if you were there the original discussion that we had. But okay, because you're probably with Fat Dragon at that point, or something like that. But so there was about a handful of us. Were you there? Do you recall being there?
I don't think I was there
either. But so anyway, so there was about 5 of us, and we just started bouncing ideas off of each other. And then when I got home, I said, all right, I had like the Dragon CD archive, like Dragon magazine, like 1 through 300, whatever it was on CD. So I went through it and I pulled all of the Lankmar stuff from like the old issues. And I basically put together this massive document of like other reference stuff. And I sent that around to Joe. It's like, here, like we have all this reference stuff to draw on. I think I had an interview with Library in like another magazine. I scanned that, put it in there, and just put together this huge packet. And Joe was like, congratulations, you are now lead designer of DCC Lankmar. Because, I said, okay, I guess we're going to do that. And so it started, and this was back in the days of Google Plus, the long departed and missed Google Plus. There was a chat, there was a circle, whatever they had called it, in the back of that group set up, and it was Harley and me and Doug, and I think we had Brendan and Joe involved, but they never showed up. So it was just basically the 3 of us bouncing ideas off of each other. Like I think we should do this, and we talked about everything. We talked about like the architecture, like what does Lankmar?
That's right. Roof lines were big for about a week.
Roof lines were big because we literally were like, it's kind of like a Mediterranean climate, so they wouldn't have to like be pitched for snow. Like that's like we literally had this discussion, and that's when we started talking about luck economy. But Harley has a lot going on in his life, so he would come in and then like something would take him away. So it would usually be Doug and I sharing a hotel room at like a convention, and we would sit and we would talk Lankmar, and we'd talk about luck economy and all the rest of the stuff, and what Lankmar wasn't, and so it literally like. I think it was 5 years, almost it was at least 4 years that we were bouncing ideas off and writing it and putting it all together. So it wasn't like a cash grab. It was like we said from the beginning, like the goal is like we're going to get Liber right. For the first time, we were going to get Liber right, because other people have made the stab at it, and I think people had fallen short. So we were gifted with, in my opinion, the perfect rule system to use as the backbone for it. So.
Michael, one thing I find fascinating as I talk to more and more creators is there seems to very often be a moment when a decision is made that makes it all click. A decision or a choice to throw something out, to add something, to play with something, and it happens, and then everybody goes, oh, wait, oh shit, this is it. Now it all makes sense. Did that happen as this was being put together?
Yeah, I will have to say it's the fleeting luck mechanic. The fleeting luck mechanic, because that came up really early, and it was such a simple decision. It was just a simple mechanic that's really easy to pick up, and it just changes the way that it changes your attitude about how you're going to play. It's like it totally throws that like, all right, this is going to be a swords and sorcery. This is flashing blades. This is craziness. This is a setting where we got Fafford drunk, and then we tied him to a bed, and he broke out of the bed and he's chasing the gray mouse around. Like we wanted to capture that. So the fleeting luck mechanic really just rewards you for doing this kind of stuff. And because the fact that all this accumulated luck can go away at any moment, there's no sense in holding on to it. And when it does go away, that just encourages you to do more stupid stuff, to do more like extravagant stuff, to start earning that thing back. And the fleeting luck, I knew that even if DCC Lankmar fell on its face completely and everybody looked at it and said, this is the worst iteration of Lankmar I've never seen in life, I knew that fleeting luck was going to make the jump and appear in core DCC. And I was 100% right. There are people who have no interest in running Lankmar whatsoever, but they're using the fleeting luck rules. So.
There are people who have stolen it for their own settings.
Yep. You asked permission,
So, Brendan, I'm going to put you in charge of a very important thing, which is people are listening. They're getting jazzed up. Where do they need to go?
To find out what we do?
Yeah.
Okay, well, absolutely visit us at goodmangames.com. We're like goodman-games.com. I guess in the age of Google, you'll find us. You can find us on Twitter. On Twitch, we have a lot of great content on Twitch. and we're putting up new Twitch shows all the time. So it's Goodman Games Official on Twitch. We actually have, if you're interested in learning how to play the game, I would say, if you want to actually start with actual play, there's a ton of actual play on YouTube right now. You can go on there. You can go to our official channel and also other channels that are running it as well. There were several different shows where you can watch every level of the play from people who are running funnels, people who are running higher level adventures, and then every kind of other strange iteration of Dungeon Crawl Classics. You can find a sampling of that online, or on YouTube someplace. Let's say you just want to learn how to play.
Yep.
If you want to learn how to play, we have a demo night most Tuesdays. Every Tuesday, I'm not doing a podcast. You can sign up and I'll and actually play a game with me. I take 5 at a time for demo nights, and I'll do a special one if you need a special time zone or whatever. And sometimes we do a demo week where me and the demo crew will do like 15 games in a weekend and just rock it out. Come and find us, and come and find us at the conventions. We're back on the road this year. We're going to be at GaryCon this year. Big old fingers crossed. Don't forget GaryCon's here. Also, we have our own online conventions. We have DCC Day, which is totally worth checking out. And what's that? What do y'all smell? Is that romance in the air? Why, Romance of the Cyclops Con is going to be in or around the romantic holidays this year. And I hope you'll come and play a game with me and some of the other DCC illustrious.
Well, it's going to be November, so not the most romantic of holidays, but so it is my birthday month, so yes, you are right on some level, but
and I love turkey, so.
Well, hey, since we talked about how great the DCC community is, I also want to throw out there that there is a Facebook group not run by Goodman Games called DCC RPG Rocks, and that's a great place to meet other members of the community and discuss the game.
Yeah, and guys, we're going to have links to all of that in the show notes. Harley, I've got an important question for you though before we leave. As somebody listening suddenly gets a $100 gift card to Goodman Games. They've never played DCC before. They listened to us talking about it. How should they spend that $100?
Well, they should go to Goodman-games.com, and they should download all the free stuff to start with, like the free character sheets, the quick start rules, like go to Purple Sorcerer Games and get the free dice roller. And so once they have more gaming material than they need, it's all been offered to them free. They hold on to that $100 gift card until like the middle of February, maybe late March, and DCC 100, the Kickstarter finally goes live.
Nice.
And then they just go in whole hog, and they get Music of the Spheres is Chaos, DCC 100, and they
Does Kickstarter accept gift cards?
I will mail them $100 so that they can partake in DCC 100, because it's going to be amazing. And
that's exciting.
That's like thick in our heads right now. Like right now, Michael and Joseph and I are bouncing emails almost hourly on like, all right, what more can we pack in here? How much cooler can we make this Kickstarter? So that's if I had to buy one thing that was from Goodman Games in the next year, it would be DCC 100.
I will interject, however, that if you cannot wait that long, is that we do offer what we call the beginner's bundle, and for that basically for I think it's $50. I'm thinking offhand.
I think it's even less than
that. What it is, yeah, but it's around the 50. So you can spend about half of that gift certificate, and that will get you a copy of the DCC rulebook. It will get you a copy of the Funky Dice. It will give you the DCC Judges screen, and it will give you an adventure of choice. So basically, you can either spend that $50 or blow that $40 on like some other role play game starter set, which gives you an adventure with the boiled down rules and maybe 2 pairs of dice or something like that. So yeah, so the first time fan kit, you can't go wrong with that. If you want to go see, worst comes to worst, you're out $50, and you can sell the rule book and all the dice, independent.
independently in eBay and make $10 out of the deal. You know.
Yeah, you can sell all the parts for more than you spend.
Yeah. Don't everybody do that. Don't everybody just buy it and then make it. It's just not worth it. eBay fees and all the rest of that stuff. Yeah.
I think Michael just created Bitcoin.
Well, I think there's a Ponzi exchange that can be done here somehow.
All right.
My Venmo, never.
Oh, that's funny. So for those of you listening, you just scroll right down right now and you're going to see links to everything that we just talked about. Gentlemen, I can't thank you enough. This was a lot of fun. I normally do not have 4 people on my show. I was nervous as hell, but I think we knocked it out of the park.
Yeah, I mean, once you all share a bed like a bunch of puppies, we can have no problem just talking about this.
Well, thank you so much for having us, Craig. It was a real blast.
Oh, it was a ton of fun. And for those of you that sat through this whole thing, like you're still listening, I appreciate you too. Take care.
We hope you enjoyed this episode. Subscribe to Tabletop Talk and share it with your friends. Check out our content on YouTube and Twitch. Follow us on Twitter and Facebook and stay updated on everything coming from Third Floor. All the links are in the show notes. Take care, floorheads.
Oh, hey, are you still here? Wow. Well, the episode is over, but if you're bored, why not go to patreon.com and support the show for as little as $1 a month? Yeah, you can just scroll down and get the link. It's Patreon that makes this and all of our other content possible. Don't you want to join the other floorheads on the Patreon Discord? Anyway, thanks for sticking around. Take care.